Greetings, all you beautiful, amazing, enlightened beings. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is David McLeod. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. And this is episode 28, if you can believe it. And we're calling this one Despicable Me. Well, let's just dive right in. And I'm going to go around my screen here, and I'm going to invite each of you to introduce yourself. And on my screen, I'm going to start with Nancy today. Nancy, please introduce yourself.
I will. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Nancy Stevens. I'm a longtime member of the Wellness Universe. I work as a kind of a self-care and well-being coach, helping others to find and own their own story so they can live completely and fully. I'm also the co-founder of a skincare brand, Uplift Clean Beauty. I'm an ambassador for the Wellness Universe, and I've enjoyed being a co-author in 2 of their 4 books. So always lots of awesome, good things going on here in the Wellness Universe.
Thank you, Nancy. And by the way, could you just repeat the name of that skincare line?
Yes. Skincare line is upliftcleanbeauty.com. Actually, you can find it online.
Nice.
We are clean, vegan, chemical-free, and naturally preserved.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. And next on my screen is Sarah. Sarah, would you please introduce yourself, tell us where you are and how you're doing?
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane, and I'm in the UK, and I'm doing very well. Thank you very much indeed. Mostly probably down to the energy that I do insist on using on myself that I use for clients as well. So, right. Because I work with Reiki and what I call vocal Reiki, so toning sound energy, supporting people to heal hurt, pain, and trauma of their past, reconnect with their inner child, and live a much more fulfilled life, because I know the difference it's made for me. So, and I suppose, yes, I work from the experiences of my own healing journey, and that's me.
Thank you, Sarah. And Christy, please unmute and say hello and tell us about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm joining you today from Wells, Maine. I do have a bit of a throat thing today, so I'm happy to be able to join you by webcam. And I am an intuitive, emotional, physical, spiritual healer, able to work with the mind-body connection and also to do inner child healing and empowerment. And kind of one of the models of my practice is time is not linear, so we can change the past in this now moment. Happy to be talking to you about ways to turn down the narrative on that Despicable Me audio.
Yeah. That's a great way to start, actually, because that's really what it is, isn't it? It's an audio loop. It just keeps going and going and going. And I think what we all like to do is turn down the volume, as you suggested. But eventually, we want to stop the loop altogether. And that's, I think, what we're really going to be talking about today. So, well, Christy, since you brought that up, what does the Despicable Me idea actually mean to you, and how does it manifest in your life?
So from my perspective, which kind of, as Sarah said, I think as guides and coaches and sojourners, we can only speak from really our own experience. And I think that many times those of us who have felt some sort of wounding, whether it's neglect or abandonment or even feeling not loved, but especially any type of abuse. I think that as adults, almost like unconsciously perhaps, we can become that abusive energy in our lives because that's kind of what we learned. So kind of breaking that cycle has to be from a space of consciousness. And I like to say awareness, again, having that consciousness, equals the power of choice. The choices are always there, but maybe we didn't see them, equals the power to change. And that is that is your life mastery. That is your ability to be conscious and to make new choices.
Beautiful. Yes, awareness is like the number one most important aspect of any path of personal growth. I mean, you can't really do anything until you know where you are right now. You can't go where you want to go unless you know where you are. So, because then otherwise you end up doing what a lot of people do, and that's just wandering in a random pattern, you know? Well, I have no idea where I am, but I really like that thing over there, so that's where I'm going to go next. And yeah.
So I think, I had asked earlier if I could kind of bow out early. So I think there's like two major things I would like to share on this topic. And again, this is my own perspective. This is part of my healing work that I do, is that to realize that when you're picking on yourself, you're actually picking on the youngest wounded self within you. You may not feel that abuse or that discourse here in this present moment it's really affecting that youngest aspect of yourself that's been wounded. So to be aware of that message of, yes, I didn't like when someone else treated me this way as a child. So I want to resolve not to treat myself this way as an adult. I want to be a better parent to myself than what I experienced in my childhood. And Spirit shared with me 9 syllables to use as a kind of hook or turn off switch to shut that down. And I'm going to paste that into the chat, but I'm also going to kind of speak it. So there's really 2 ways you can do this, and you can really morph it to what you want. But the first is, when you do find yourself saying something, is to say, that is not the truth of who you are, almost as the observer self, or if it feels more natural, that is not the truth of who I am. And anytime we use I am in a statement, it's very powerful because we're invoking that higher self. So again, that is not the truth of who you are. That is not the truth of who I am. Use them both if you want. But I would love to hear from you. If you do try those, what shifts for you in a very short time?
That's a great statement. How does that land for you, Nancy?
Well, I was just thinking of that. I've done a little bit of work with like sorting and sifting between our supposed narrative that we in the moment think is true into expanding into a truer truth. And maybe I love that, because maybe at that moment when we're feeling really intense emotions about something, it feels as if that's, maybe if it's probably more negative, more heavy, it feels that that is it, that's, oh my, everything wrapped in. But then taking a pause and moving away from that, you can breathe and say, is this the truth of who I am, or that is not the truth? So that word truth puts me to pause and know there's always a truer story, a more full, more complete story. So yeah, working just to heal or put down that narrative that's always that loop, that audio loop, and really knowing that there's way more to whatever's going on than in that movie, even though that feels like the most engaging truth. Right. So that's very, very, I would say that's ongoing, almost, depending on where you are, almost daily, to stay present, not sit into that.
Let's hear from you now, Sarah. What do you think about that?
I love that. But the one thing that came to mind when Nancy first started speaking was our name. And many of us don't like our name. And that for me is because our abiding memories of our name being used are those times when we are being told off or told to do something or not to do something.
Right.
And as a human being, we are very good, most of us are very good at remembering the negative feelings around something, rather than those times when you've fallen over, you've picked up, you're given a cuddle, you're given a kiss, your knee's been kissed because you scraped it or something. Those caring, loving moments are so outweighed by that, what do you think you're doing? And all those sort of type of things. And this is where I would sort of say it's helping. There are ways that we can help ourselves to reconnect with the truth of our name and who we are. And I would simply say, just start. I know I work with toning, I know I work with the voice, and yes, I do tone my name on a daily basis to keep myself connected to myself. So it's not a suggestion I'm making because I don't use it. It's a suggestion I'm making because I do. Speak your name. You're not asking anything of yourself. You're just acknowledging yourself. And it hasn't got to be surname. I would say, especially if there's anybody who's changed their name in any way, the name your mother called you as a child. Now, I could go into all the reasonings behind that, which is obviously information or awarenesses that came to me because I was one of those that changed my name. So I know it's all part of my experiences, my journey. And so it is important. The name our mother called us, I believe, is the name we chose. We guide our parents with our name. And that's why it's important.
Yeah.
So, but then that's also, if we've got a dislike of our name, that is also holding on to those energies that we are not good enough, which can turn into that despicable me, because I'm not a nice person, because that's how my name makes me feel.
Yeah, that's really nice encapsulation, Sarah. I appreciate that. One thing that I have come to realize in what Christy had written there, that is not the truth of who I am. The challenge that I think that most people have is distinguishing between who they really are and the story they make up about themselves through their ego mind and through their psyche. That, you know, and even the name part of it is often associated with our physical nature. In my understanding, I am not my name, but my name is a pointer to me. It's also a pointer to other people who happen to share that name. And I don't know what the commonalities are between all of those Davids throughout the world, but I'm sure that there is a common thread. And just as I'm sure all the Sarahs of the world have a similar connection, and all the Christies and all the Nancys of the world have similar connections. But what I think the truth is, I am a divine, magnificent spiritual being of light and love. That's what I am. And that is ultimate truth, I believe. So I am the truth, but my ego mind has other ideas that seem to go against what that real truth is. And so it can be confusing when you're trying to distinguish between your spiritual essence, your true essence, and that ego essence that's constantly, present in your mind. And this is part of the reason that we work so hard to quiet our ego minds so that we can get back to the truth of who we are. But if we don't do that, then we end up listening to this constant chatter in our heads that makes us wrong, that says we're bad, that says we're not worthy, that says you screwed up over here, therefore, and then makes a whole list of conclusions as a result of that statement. And so that's the kind of challenge that we're up against. And so, we've been talking about unraveling this despicable me idea, and we wanted to talk about something like no regrets, no mistakes. There are no mistakes. And as you said, Sarah, I like this really. in a way, we guided our parents to choose a name for us. Well, in the same way, we've guided ourselves to have certain experiences so that we can look upon our life, from the whole linear time aspect. And I know time is not really linear, but from that mental linear aspect of time, we can see all the things we have done. And then we can say, oh, wait, that was a mistake. Or that is something I really regret. Well, what's the value in that? Because if you didn't have that event, guess what? You wouldn't have made it here. No, I mean, I drew a straight line. Obviously, we don't all travel in a straight line, but you get my point. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Perfect sense. All the stuff that's happened to me in my life. And I accept the fact that I've chosen it. I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing if I hadn't had the experiences I'd have, because I wouldn't have had the experience of those to be able to do what I do, to be able to support the way I support. It's been absolutely essential to have those experiences to do what I feel I'm here to do.
Great. Yeah.
I was going to say, Christy, I know you're going to be up early, but I really was looking at what you wrote, your second comment about your statements, that the 9 syllables, that you said 9 is the energy of change and ending, in terms of using that truth statement. And this is really interesting. A student of mine came to class yesterday and he asked me what my life number was. I'm like, well, and I said, I do a little bit of that. I'm not really sure. And then we did, my number was 9 yesterday. So I'm like, oh, and that's, the ending of completion and change. So.
I think, we can have a jaded perspective of ending, as endings are bad, but endings have to happen to usher in beginnings.
That's right.
I think one of the things I'd like to share, I don't know if Sarah brought it up or David, but that whole concept of, having new experiences, learning, growing, that's part of why we're here. And I think for me personally, the biggest aha moment, probably not the biggest, but relative to this whole subject, was I read something about how we're here to evolve, we're here to grow, we're here to create new, we're here to, expand. We're expanding ourselves, we're expanding everything, consciousness as ourselves, through ourselves. And so I realized that these narratives, whatever it is, we all have our own. I kind of see them as like rabbit holes or quicksand pits. Mm-hmm. If we keep stepping in that same, or, a pile of shit, excuse my language, if we keep stepping in that same pile, it's almost like we're self-sabotaging that quest to try something different, to do something different, to learn something different. So I kind of had this aha moment of, there's that thing again. I already know how that makes me feel. I already know the place it takes me to, and it's not the space of light and love that I want to live in now. So again, that was an awareness for me of, I could keep stepping in that, but what if I choose not to? And that's kind of why I think it's good to have an option B. And why the suggestion for saying, okay, there's that story again that's telling me I'm not good enough or I'm too much. That's kind of the other spectrum. Some people, they don't have that feeling of not being enough, but they have that feeling that they were always too much. People couldn't take their energy because it's just too much, or they're too this, or they're too that. Right. So there's that spectrum there, right? So that is not the truth of who I am. I want to be more. I want to be whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, I'm too much of this or too much of that actually translates to not enough of something else. That's the way a lot of people see it. For example, as soon as you said too much, I remember I can't remember how many times my mom would say, "Oh, for God's sake, you're too full of yourself. Go outside and play. Take that out there." You know, in other words, what she was really saying is, I cannot tolerate this kind of energy around me right now. I need more quiet. I need more silence. I need more serenity. So I wasn't quiet enough. I wasn't small enough. I wasn't serene enough for her, you see? So either way, it doesn't matter. One translates to the other. But I totally resonate with what you're saying. And I think that does have an impact, because in spite of the fact that I often got told I was too full of myself, I noticed that I was trying to hold myself back. I was trying to be more pleasing to my mother, you know. In fact, you know, I claim to myself, I try to explain to myself that I was a people pleaser, but the truth is I wasn't. I was a mommy pleaser. That's what I was. You know, because I would often act out in the presence of other people when I couldn't act out in the presence of my mother. Now, this is a new aha moment that I've just had. I just realized this today. So thank you for this. I mean,
Yeah. And
awesome.
you know, David, like, if you can't be full of yourself, capital SELF,
right,
who the hell are you going to be?
Exactly. And if you're not full of yourself, well, then what are you full of? Because you're full of something, you know. And yeah. So anyway, this is a great moment.
I hear that this brings something up. So when my mom at night, she doesn't live near me, but when I'll call to check in on her and dad, and I intentionally want to bring loving and kind energy, and I can be high energy, but I also need a lot of quiet time. But I'll call, you know, whatever, and my mom will say, "Why aren't you energetic today?" Okay. I said, "Yeah, Mom." I said, "What else am I going to be?" I said, I choose to be energetic to you." But I was like, in her, I could feel that little child, like wanting to
shrink
down, knowing that that's, you know, is maybe coming for me, same way, being told, you know, calm down, quiet down, chill out, as if, yeah, my energy or what I was doing was not meshing with theirs, perhaps. But that's interesting.
I've always thought that what I'd like to do if somebody said that to me and we were in the same place, "Oh God, aren't you full of energy today?" I'd like to just leap up, give them a big hug and say, "Yes, I am. Thank you for noticing."
Well, here's the deal. I actually now, I'm like you. If I'm not feeling high energy, I'm not going to show up high energy. But if I am feeling high energy, I'm going to show up higher, positive, not weird. And I'm like, back in the day, I would have been, "Oh no, I need to just be this one clear vanilla path because, you know, don't want people noticing or saying things." And I'm like, no, I get to be me when I teach or whatnot. And it's up to that, you know, it's that own person's story if they're perceiving it to be what I now know, that it has nothing to do with me. And whatever is needing to come up, if it's that positive high energy, then awesome. No more, "Oh, okay." Like I said, then I would be running my audio to try to put my audio story in their story, and that will never happen. I'm not able to.
Well, good for you for not backing down.
Yeah. Well, it's been recent. And I really appreciate that I can do that without, quote, feeling the need to, you know, shrink.
Yeah. Well, Christy, at the beginning, you talked about awareness. And of course, I think as we've said over and over and over again on these shows, awareness is everything. But I think today we also want to talk about acceptance. I mean, we can't really change anything unless we can accept what is right now. And accepting it doesn't necessarily mean you agree with everything about the thing, although you might. It just means, okay, now I see what's really going on and I accept it as it is. What can I learn from this? What can I take from it? How can I move forward with this information? Is there something I'd like to change as a result of what I now understand and now I accept? And at the same time as we're doing that, we want to bring compassion into the mix, because if we aren't compassionate towards ourselves, then we're just going to continue running that same story loop, even as we are supposedly trying to grow and expand. So, I think compassion and acceptance really kind of work hand in hand. And so Sarah, how do you bring compassion and acceptance into your practice?
I just encourage people as much as possible to love themselves, because isn't that the start of everything to do with yourself, is loving yourself? And I think we've said this so many times, but we are not taught to love ourselves. Right. Loving yourself is not something you are meant to do. It certainly wasn't taught within the Catholic Church. It certainly wasn't taught within my own home. It wasn't taught within school. Acceptance of self as self is, but it's being aware of who the self is, who the I am is.
Right.
What feels right for you? And it is about the feeling. If you get offered the chance to do something, does that feel right? Does it feel wrong for me? And I know there's no such thing as right or wrong per se, because what will be right for one person could be wrong for another, and vice versa. But it's what is right for you. What are those feelings you are having? But until you are in that space of truly loving yourself, it's how do you listen to those feelings? How do you interpret those feelings? And it is about, that unfortunately is to a certain degree the ego mind coming in, and it's interpreting without the ego mind. Mm-hmm. It's so for me, I would say it's definitely about loving yourself, caring about yourself, consideration for self, without it being that selfish word, because until we can do all of that for ourselves, we cannot truly do it for others. And learning to say no can actually be an amazing gift to everybody involved. Yes can be more harmful than a no ever could be. Because if a no is truth, mm-hmm. and a yes would be a lie, would be a disconnect from true self. So, but I think it's also about this Despicable Me thing. It's also about, okay, there may be things that we think, oh, wish I hadn't done that. Let's go into that immediate forgiveness of self, so that we can let it go. We can't change it. We can move on from it.
Right.
So don't hold on to it. And yes, it is make it about self and not about others. Then we can start stepping in to our truest self.
Yeah, that's definitely what you brought up. There's a lot of very meaningful content there. I feel a great, we're in a, like in the middle of a shift of people beginning to understand it's okay to learn to love and accept all of themselves, countering how we were raised in public school, parents, workplace. Up until a few years ago, I was completely out of synchronicity with thinking it was okay to take care of myself and love myself, because that countered where I live, the cultural impact of give to others first, serve others, be reliable, be responsible, don't rock the boat, so to speak. But then how can we truly be in relationship with others if we don't feel that way about ourselves? Like the old adage, extend kindness and generosity to others. Well, that's great. But what if you can't stand yourself because you have this dialogue running? Where is that line of, again, I guess it starts with, wait a minute, what's going on? Why am I running into a brick wall of feeling like I need to or should or do this, but it feels very uncomfortable or awkward or out of place. So it does take a moment to pause and open that garbage up, so to speak, and extend that to yourself. Like you said, I think we're moving really thoughtfully into that area of really loving and caring for ourselves, but there's a lot of baggage from previous culture that some of us who are just getting started need to begin to wade through. And that's the precipice of, oh, I don't like this, wanting to change, but giving themselves permission to learn how to do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's so much juicy stuff here today. There's many different facets that we're covering, and I love it all. I think it's all really, really valuable stuff. I think the concept of self-love is something that we need to develop even more, and perhaps we should just do a whole show on that topic by itself. But Christy, just to get back to the idea of the forgiveness and acceptance, how do they come together for you in your life, and how do you share that with your clients?
So I guess there's like a multi answer. For me, like, I'm really resonating and living in a space of, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. That's a game changer right there. So when you say yourself, myself, the self, I think of source, God, the universe, all that is, whatever you call that space that the spiritual me having the human experience comes from. So if I love that, or inside, if I love that aspect of the breath that's breathing me, then how can I not love myself? So that's a big concept right there. But, that, I think that's a huge space for healing and self-love. The other part of it is that if we look back at ourselves and we see something that we did, and, we made a decision in a moment with the knowledge, with the awareness, with the maturity, with the whatever that we had in that moment. And then as soon as we made that decision, other things happened, other information came to us, other details that we didn't know in that one pivotal moment of making that decision. So we look back on that decision almost as if we're another person, because we have more information, we have more insights. So we would not, most of us would not judge another as harshly as we judge ourselves. So if we look at ourselves in this kind of nested way of seeing that these younger aspects of ourselves, even if it's a week ago aspect of ourselves, didn't have the information we have now. We need to almost like give forgiveness to that aspect of ourselves for not knowing what we know now. And we also need to take our present self and say to this other one, I'm sorry I judged you for what you didn't know. So again, that's a big area of healing.
That's beautiful. I like that. The breath that breathes me. That's nice. I like that. Yeah.
That space of like knowing that we're connected. That's the space of unconditional love.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about, forgiving the aspect of ourselves. I mean, I don't know if you use the word forgiving, but I think that's the energy that I'm feeling here. The aspect of, or the perspective of forgiving ourselves for even a moment ago, however long that time might be, basing a decision on incomplete information. It was complete at the time because that's all the information we could have. But now, today, we have a slightly different perspective and more information. So from this perspective, yesterday's information was incomplete. That doesn't mean it was wrong. It was just incomplete. And so if we can learn to forgive ourselves in that way, that is a powerful feature. But here's something that I like to teach people, and I talk about this in my own forgiveness teachings. How about learning how to pre-forgive? That's what I call it, pre-forgiveness. In other words, you know damn well that you're going to do something in the future that is perhaps not your ideal self showing up. Can you come to a place of forgiveness right now so that when that happens, it's easier to forgive yourself in that present moment that comes up? In the same way, other people are probably going to do things to hurt you in the future. Can you forgive them now? Because the moment you forgive, as Sarah said so well earlier, you basically let go of your connection to the negative energy associated with that event. Well, release that energy now before it happens. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's a practice that you can work on and you can develop with, just keep devoting yourself to it. Somebody mentioned discipline, and I think that's a key word here.
My throat is really bad, so I think I'm going to jump off. But I just want to encourage people to take that word mistakes and add a hyphen in the middle. Mistakes. Actors get many takes when they're doing a movie. So I think these are mistakes. They're, things that we didn't maybe do optimally. And I think really the only true mistakes are when we knowingly make a decision that is going to hurt someone.
Or hurt ourselves.
That's a mistake, right? But if we just didn't know, then that's a mistake. So do it again.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So sorry, guys.
You're feeling better.
Thank you.
Up your throat.
Yeah, you take care of yourself. Love and blessings and healing on your journey.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you for sharing today. Really good, really, really good.
Oh, thank you. You guys too. It's been a great show. That's why I stayed on so long.
Anyway, bye-bye. So Sarah, I know you were going to say something here, and I really want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I was going to say, maybe we could think differently about the forgiveness of that self that didn't know everything, and be really grateful to that self that didn't know everything, because we had the courage to take action, which led us to learn more and led us to be who we now are, to have the information we had to grow. And so because forgiveness can unfortunately have a negative connotation. It suggests wrongness has happened. Whereas obviously, if we've taken a decision with the information we've had and we've made our best choice, other people may have had loads of other information. We didn't have it, but we took action anyway. So isn't it about gratitude to that self for having the courage to take the move and not wait for more information, because it probably wasn't going to be forthcoming until you made the move anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you. I think gratitude is, I think gratitude actually is probably the most powerful force in the universe.
Yeah.
And, you know, gratitude is actually infused all around with love and positive intention and everything else. I think, though, that for many people, the challenge of getting to gratitude is that we're blocked by all this other stuff, the stuff that we've been talking about, this Despicable Me stuff. As long as I still have that story loop connecting in my head and running in my ego mind's going nuts, it's very hard to feel that energy of gratitude. And so we're talking about little tools that help people to reduce the energy of the Despicable Me so that we can get back to that sense of gratitude and self-love and self-acceptance and everything that goes with it. But I totally agree with you. You know, I've heard it said that, you know, you fake it till you make it kind of thing. And I don't think that really works. That's like the story of the positive thinking kind of mentality. Well, if I just think positive thoughts, everything's going to turn around. Well, you might have some luck with that. But the problem is, if you don't do something with those unconscious negative thoughts, they're going to keep cropping up, and they're going to sabotage your positive thoughts. So you have to do the inner work. At some level, you have to get in and do that inner work, uncover all the, as Nancy referred to it, uncover all the garbage, and then maybe do a little bit of inspection on this garbage and say, which of it do I want to heal and which of it do I just want to push aside? You know, maybe this is just trash and I can just throw it out, but maybe there's something here for me to learn, you know? And so that's the thing that I think we all have to do. We have to get down, find those old wounds, those old messages, those old childhood traumas, heal them with as much love and forgiveness and compassion as we can. And then the voice just quiets down, and then all of a sudden, positive thinking starts to work. That's kind of how we have to do it. So at least that's been my experience, and I don't know anybody who's able to surpass that. Even the people who go through these spiritual transformations on some level have to do the inner work before they can get there.
Yeah, I just to add to that, I feel we can be led to a path, direction, or whatnot, and it starts with our own awareness of making a note if we're feeling resistant, tense, nervous, scared, frightened, angry, frustrated. You know, unfortunately, if people say, I don't know what to do, where do I start? I was talking to a friend, I just need to get those steps. And the first step to any of this, as we said earlier, is by starting to make a note of a bubbling up within you that you maybe physically felt somewhere in your body, maybe an energy sensation that doesn't, you know how you feel when everything's going your way, like you're just good energy, happy, balanced. So making a note of your energy, where you're feeling it physically, and being unafraid to ask, where is this coming from? Maybe in the past we blamed others. Oh, I'm this way because of the weather, because of the event of that person, of the office toxic energy of my whatever. Like you were externally giving others the power that they made you feel that way. Maybe some do know I had the worst childhood or adulthood or marriage ever. But being able to relate in some way, this feeling came from maybe began to be here, and then exploring that with love, not with judgment or condemning ourselves. Like you said, bringing in that forgiveness. But that is the most basic, but yet most powerful means of moving away from that despicable me into, wow, there's so much more truth. There's so much more truthful things out here for me to see and be into. I know, like, my journey of all of you, maybe being here on the show, I guess had to start with that one day by myself of noticing I was the only one who felt really angry and frustrated, and everyone was just having the best time ever, or what I labeled it. And I had to do, unfortunately, I would have always stayed there had I not began to dig a little bit deeper within me.
That's great perspective, Nancy. And just to summarize, I think what you're saying is the first step really is for us to just notice and become aware and just take the time, a little bit of introspection, just asking a simple question. How am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? And just see what comes up and answer the questions with as much detail as you can. Maybe you might say, and where is this feeling coming from? What is the source of this energy? You might not have the answer immediately, but I can guarantee you, if you just pause and listen, the answer will come. And when it comes, then you'll start to become, you basically, every time you ask yourself those questions, you're increasing your level of awareness. And the more you increase your level of awareness, the more information you have available that empowers you to make whatever choice you believe you should make in that moment.
Yes.
Our story is a great place to start. Knowing our story, not living there, knowing it, being aware of it. And yes, if you need to start, you do need to start in that place of how does it make me feel, my story. But I would also say to everybody, whoever was involved in your story, because it's not going to be just about you, what were the circumstances? What was their childhood? What was their parents' childhood? What did they witness as children? There is, don't get me wrong, I'm not condoning any treatment of any child that is abusive, hurt in any way, shape or form. I am not. But I think if, as the adult, it's like my own story. There was no abuse, it was an accident, and then it was the rules and regulations of the hospital and circumstances that meant over a 3-month period, I saw my parents for an hour once a week. And that was when I was a year old. They know the emotional damage that does to children. They've learnt that. But that is what I was put through by the system and circumstances. I know the story. I do not blame anyone. And it is about taking blame out of it.
Very good, yes.
It is about helping yourself to say, okay, fine. It couldn't be explained to me as a child. My child was hurting desperately, whatever the situation was. And the child had no control. However, now as an adult, I don't have to relive that and recreate that in my own life with my own younger family, with my own children. I can say that hasn't got to be, that is not the case going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And as children, we always balk against everything our parents do and say anyway, because they don't understand. They've never been kids.
That's right.
But seriously, I've got younger nieces and nephews, and I've now got great nieces and nephews because I've never had children. And it's listening to them, and it's and watching them, and I'm just thinking, you can understand from the adult perspective. It's helping them to understand from the adult perspective.
Right.
Because it's the adult you who can really support that narrative that's going on from your story. It is only the adult you that can support you. And when you can learn and come to terms with what happened and what may, because especially if your parents or your grandparents are no longer around, you can't ask the question. How many of us know what our parents and our grandparents' childhood was like, what they witnessed from their parents, etc.? We don't, because we've never asked.
Right.
Because,
and maybe we haven't even had the opportunity to ask because before we got curious, parents were gone.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And as much as I know some of my parents' story, I don't know the day-to-day life.
That's right. Yeah. I think, we've been talking about some really, really good stuff here. And we've talked about quieting that story loop, maybe going into some awareness and acceptance and forgiveness and compassion and all those things. But I think ultimately what we have to do, and this is a challenge for a lot of people, we have to understand and reclaim our perfection, our divine perfection. We have to come back to the truth. And truth with capital T, the way Christy wrote it in the chat, is ultimate truth, and it is perfect in its own way. And ultimately, that's what we all are, is perfect truth and all that is and everything else. We just happen to be having these temporary human points of experience in our physical bodies, in which we create this illusion that we're separate from one another, and that each of us is somehow required to fight against all the others to protect ourselves. I mean, it's a completely ridiculous story. And yet, in its way, it is a perfect story because it helps us to understand that truth, the truth of who we really are, if only we take the time to open up and listen.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry because this has been a fabulous conversation, but I've got to go.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to try and wrap this up before you had to leave. Is there anything else you'd like to say to finish up?
I think I've said everything that it's been going through my head, and I am very grateful for that being able to do that. David and Nancy, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Another great show. A lot of key insights from you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks a lot. Sorry, folks, I've got another program very shortly. So I'll see you next
See you
time.
later.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
So Nancy, it's back to you and me again.
Wow.
This is where we started, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Wow, the screens are bigger now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this has been a very, very interesting topic for sure. It went a lot deeper than I thought it would, and it went there in a very, very rapid way, I think.
Yeah. There's just so many layers and levels to, like you said, the ego mind, a psyche, in relation to what's true, what's a truer truth, our daily dialogue,
Right.
and how quickly, without knowing it, we dive into that dialogue. But today we've unpacked, I feel we've given a good start to those maybe just beginning their journey, those in the middle, giving them some good steps to just stay present with love in your story, so you can unpack it and move beyond that to the truth of who you are. That to me is a lifeline of living more fully and completely, whether or not an old dialogue runs through and we can run it back out, or help others. It is a journey, but it is so well worth it when we're able to provide this beautiful energy to ourselves and give that to the world that so needs this today.
Yeah, I think what happens is the more work we do, the
Mhm.
more we raise our own awareness and our own consciousness, the more we begin to see the amazing beauty and magnificence of life as a whole, even in the face of certain things that we may think of as ugly or painful or hurtful or damaging. On some level, we collectively bring that into our world, and we're doing it in order to, I don't know, facilitate our growth, our wake up, our whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So all of us have the power to raise our awareness. We all have the power to elevate our consciousness. We all have the power to heal our own wounds. And the more we do that, the more we heal the wounds of the world. Because when I do my work, I start showing up a different way. And the people who are in my sphere of influence begin to notice that. And they then are influenced by that. And they begin to do their work, which then creates another circle of influence. So it's a ripple effect that all of us are empowered to create in order to heal all of humanity.
So true. Yeah, we could make a whole nother topic off this topic and beyond.
I know. All right, Nancy. Well, look, I thank you so much for being here today. I know you've got something else going on, and so do I. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to thank you all for watching this, and I'm going to remind you that the recording of this and every other show that we do is on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And if you want to see other shows, you can go check them out there. I am going to say thank you so much for being here. I'm going to wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. And I'm going to say goodbye for now.
Thank you so much. Until next time, keep it real, keep it in love.